Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item are minutes of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting held on Monday, July 12th, and the recommendation is that the committee approve those minutes.
It's unanimous.
Item 2 is report of General Manager Planning and Development related to industrial zoning review. And the recommendation is that the committee receive the report dated July 23rd, 2010 of the General Manager Planning and Development entitled Industrial Zoning Review for information.
Second.
Any comment?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I think that's a good one. Thumbs up to planning. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Item 3 is report of General Manager Parks, Recreation and Culture Services related to Forest Adventure Playground request to issue a request for proposal. And I believe that staff have a recommendation related, or a presentation, excuse me, related to this.
Ms. McKay?
Thank you, Chair. We did have a few images here to share with committee, just in the event that some members of council may not have yet had the pleasure of experiencing a Forest Adventure Playground. What a Forest Adventure Playground is an opportunity to explore adventure recreation and ecotourism. It's a playground or a trail that's actually in the tree canopy, and you can just barely see it there in this image, close to the middle and the upper end of that picture. Forest Adventure Playgrounds engage children, youth, adults, and seniors in physical activity in the natural outdoor environment. It involves tree-to-tree adventures, zip lines, and air-based activities like tightrope walking and cargo nets and other sort of exciting opportunities. A typical site would have several courses that would have around 65 different play elements at different skill levels and ranging into the tree canopy up to 60 feet off the ground. Participants are secured by a safety harness at all times and are supervised by trained guides. Participants can continue through the various levels or exit or rest along the way when they've achieved their challenge level. In a typical site, 300 to 300 participants can be handled per day, and that's about 25 to 30,000 over the course of a year. Each participant must learn and demonstrate basic skills before entering the course, and this image here is showing one of those entry level activities that they need to do. There are a number of different companies in the province that are active in this, and each have developed their own techniques for installation to maximize the guest enjoyment while preserving the environment. In this image, you get a bit of a close-up look of the cabling and compression system that one company uses. As an industry, companies involved in ecotourism understand that forest sustainability is core to the guest experience and to their business, and they each have a number of measures to enhance the environment in which they operate. The site that is being considered is Mnday Park. That site has been selected because it has an area that is shown on this slide of approximately 5 acres or 2 hectares. In order for a successful Forest Adventure Playground, the site requires conifers or deciduous trees with a minimum diameter of 16 inches or 40 centimeters. Hardwoods such as oak, maple, elm, or pine and spruce are the desirable species in a forest for this type of installation. Oops, we could go back one. This image here is actually an image of the recently opened Adventure Playground in Maple Ridge. It opened July the 15th, 2010. The fees that they charge at that park are for adults $39.99 and for children $19.99. And that guest experience happens in the range of about 2 to 3 hours per person. This particular installation is on municipal land. It's the old campground area near the Golden Ears Park. The other site in the province that's on municipal land is in Victoria, in Wandafuka area, and that has proven to be a very successful site. There also are other sites in the province that are on Crown land or on private land. Probably the one that is most well known is the one in Nanaimo, and it's on private land and has very high visitor numbers and includes a big zip line and bungee cord element. Some of the reasons why municipalities have looked to install these types of experiences within their cities is that they encourage residents and visitors to explore the parks. They support physical activity and positive risk-taking. They support team building and social development. The day that I visited the Maple Ridge Park, it was wonderful to see parents with their children navigating these courses together and having a shared experience, as well as co-workers and sort of the bonding and teamwork, team building that was evident through their participation. They also demonstrate the environmental values of parks and counterbalance the nature deficit trend that has been documented within urban youth that are sort of moving away from wilderness settings. It also provides for an economically sustainable business model. The report that you have before you today is recommending that we explore this concept of establishing a forest adventure playground in Mnday Park by approving an RFP and also engaging in public consultation. The results of both of those processes would be available to committee in early fall. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Laurie. I find this a very interesting proposal. I was on the ferries just recently. I saw the advertising from the Nanaimo one. It looked like it was very well advertised. I was actually out in Maple Ridge on the weekend. I was hoping to go see it, but I wasn't sure when the location was, and I didn't get to it. How long is the one that was opened in 2010? So it's relatively new?
Yes, through the chair, very new. It just had their grand opening on July the 15th of this year.
My segue to the next question. So it's very successful now, and it's only been open since July, but how would, you said you were out there and there was lots of people attending and there was opportunities for team building and
the benefit that I had was a preview visit before the 15th, so I was part of the test crew, seeing it in advance.
Okay. In the report, it talks about a number of high-quality jobs. I was wondering if you tell me the definition of what high-quality jobs means. I know what it means to me, but I'm not sure that's what the report means. High-quality job would be someone who could afford to buy a house on it or something. I'm not sure these jobs may appeal to community members. Is that what we're talking, that type of income level? Or?
Typically, the jobs that are provided are both seasonal as well as full-time, and they're high quality in that they involve some technical training, including safety training, as well as a lot of customer service training. I don't know that somebody would want to plan their real estate portfolio around the particular job opportunities, but it does provide for stable employment around in the range of $20 an hour for the guide staff, and obviously more for their supervisory and management staff. It is sustainable jobs for students, for example, in that they could expect to see, if successful, returning employment year after year, as well as a core group of year-round staff.
Okay, I certainly like the idea of ecotourism. I'm wondering, also in the report, we talk about an interpretive program that the way I read it is we're talking about the city would be providing that. Is that correct?
Depending on if there is a successful proponent, the city would be negotiating on a range of benefits for the city. Those would include the opportunity for interpretive for educational programming in the park, interpretive signing, as well as a revenue stream to the city. the details of that negotiation, it's much too premature at this time, but clearly cities have gone into these kinds of experiences with the idea that they would be bringing benefits, both financial and programming benefits, to their city. Our experience here in Coquitlam is we have the wonderful asset of Mnday Park, and of course limited opportunities to generate funds to maintain that asset or to improve the park. So potentially in the development of a forest adventure playground, we may be in a position to generate some revenue that could actually do some improvements in Mnday Park for maintenance, as well as to increase the interpretation. So the quick answer to this is there are two potential ways to fund further interpretation of the park, and one could be through a company providing services, or the other way could be through revenue that it provides to the city, and then the city could provide the enhanced interpretation.
Right. Okay. And my final comment is just that I did have some concerns when we were talking about Mnday Park. It is a precious resource, but I think perhaps the location that has been identified in the report on the east side of the pool is probably one that I find acceptable myself, and I need to look further at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Asmussen?
Well, I want to say thank you to staff for bringing this forward. I think this is an excellent and a unique idea that I think I'm very supportive of, and I want to see this move through. I think these type of things have a minimal impact on the forest over there. I think it brings a experience of the forest to people coming there. I was in Costa Rica on a line going across, and the view from the canopy is fabulous, and how you see a different view and the experience of it. I'm just very excited to see this here. And it really is a very small area of the park we're talking about, a 400-acre park. We're talking about a 5-acre area. It's quite minimal. And I think for the benefits, for educating people on the park, the forest, and everything, there's a lot of benefits for it. You're wanting to go up for request for proposal, which I support. Once that request for proposal goes out, how long do you think until you will be coming back to council with some recommendations with that process?
Mr. Chair, we anticipate coming back to council in early fall with the results of the RFP as well as the community consultation.
Very good. Thank you. I just want to reiterate it to staff. I think this is a great idea. These are good things coming forward to you, and thank you.
Councillor Nicholson?
Thank you. I'm also pleased to see this. I like the innovation. I like doing something new and different. And I appreciate the report. When I look at the process outlined on attachment 1, we see a couple of steps that are skipped as not necessary, 6 and 7. And we're seeing public consultation taking place simultaneously with the RFP. Given the nature of Mnday Park, I think it's probably a very close second to Riverview in the hearts of most of the people of Coquitlam. I expect the public will have a good deal to say, and I think we'll have a lot of really good answers for them too. But I'd like you to expand, if you would, on how you see the public consultation taking place, how broad that will be, and how you see it impacting the end of the process if the RFP is out there as the public consultation goes on. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the public consultation is a very important part of the process, and I thank Councillor Nicholson for raising that. We could, as early as next week, open a discussion forum on our website, which we have found to be a very open process of engaging citizens in a dialogue, as well as having a formal questionnaire survey that people could fill out either through hard copy or electronically. And thirdly, through an intercept survey where we would actually have park staff in the park throughout Mnday Park to make sure that our many trail users were aware that this consultation was going on and had the opportunity to either respond to a survey in person or be referred to the website or a mail-in survey to provide their input at a later time. We very much want to take advantage of the many park users that enjoy and treasure Mnday Park to get their views on this, and certainly the decisions of council will very much be influenced by the results of that consultation process. At the same time, the request for proposal process will be structured in such a way that the city will not be bound to be proceeding with that until council has had the benefit of seeing the results of the RFP as well as the results of the community consultation. So we are being very mindful of having both of these processes proceed simultaneously, but not in any way prejudice the results in advance of seeing the results of both of those processes.
Thank you. Do you see an opportunity for something like an open house or a place where people could choose to come to speak to your staff or perhaps to some council about the proposal and its state, or do you see that as occurring sometime later in the process or not at all?
Mr. Chair, the staff have considered the idea of an open house, but our experience demonstrates that the summer months are not an ideal time to engage people in that particular technique. We do think that there are further steps in the process where the community can continue to be engaged. Obviously, when the summary report goes to committee in fall, people have the opportunity to make delegations at that time. And then should council decide to proceed with this, there will be further opportunities for consultation when we get into specific design processes. And it may be, if council decides to go down that road, that might be better timing to be hosting an open house type of format.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank staff for bringing this forward. I'm very appreciative of this proposal. And it will end up, I believe, being a major Lower Mainland attraction. And we all saw the popularity of the zip line at the Olympics with the 5-hour lineups. But more importantly, I don't think this is going to be just a local attraction. This is going to be, like I say, a major Lower Mainland attraction. Will be a huge economic driver for Coquitlam and hugely beneficial to our businesses, spin-offs, restaurants and the malls and stores. I think it would be huge. It's also going to be a money generator for our parks. I note that every year our park maintenance costs go up, and unfortunately we don't have very many options for paying for the maintenance other than through tax hikes. This will go a long ways to offset park maintenance and park upgrades through this, and I think it'll be a hugely popular, well-attended, well-received attraction. I see Mr. England is here, and he is our resident tree expert. I wonder if you could pass along what your observations and what you think that how this may affect the trees in Mnday Park.
So am I on? Speaker's on? All right. So through the chair, with the experience I have in terms of knowing what the locations are in BC and what I've seen from the documentation from some of the companies that are running these facilities, they certainly go a long way towards ensuring they minimize the risk to the trees and the ecosystem. That's part of what they're selling as part of the experience. So there would have to be some impact to trees, but the way they design it, like the platforms you see that it's still on the image up there, they're not actually, the platforms themselves are not, bolted or screwed into the trees. They minimize the impacts to the trees. They have an arborist on board with their design, and they do regular inspections. So I think they do everything they can to minimize the impact, and I think it would be, on the scale of things that you could do in a forested area, it'd be relatively low impact.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mayor Stewart?
Thank you. I see it in much the same way. I'm trying to perhaps compare the impact of this kind of a facility to the impact of a trail network that goes through a forested area. The trail network's purpose is to get people into the forest and to get them to experience the forest, and obviously the same purpose for this. But the trail network does have impact on trees and on the forest itself. Are they comparable? Or are they? If council is trying to protect the forest as much as possible, at the same time as provide the experience for residents, does this balance that?
Through the chair, yeah, I mean, there are different types of development and have different impacts. I mean, the trail construction on the ground is the primary concern, is the impact to the root zones of the trees. And this being an experience where there would be some on-the-ground activity, but primarily it's up in the canopies of the trees, so that's different. So they should be actually less impact on the ground than there would be with the development of a new trail system or the existing trail system, but different impacts in the canopy of the trees. But like I said, with the way they design it, it should be minimal, but they're two different types of facilities. With the height that they go onto the trees, in some cases there'd probably have to be they'd have to limb the trees up a little bit to be able to do the installation. But the type of area they've indicated in Mnday Park is a forested setting, so a lot of those trees don't have lower canopy, so they don't, there's not a lot of limbs they would even have to remove. So just very different facilities, and impact to trees less on the ground with this type of facility, a little bit more in the canopy of the tree, but in general wouldn't impact likely the long-term health of the trees involved.
I do want to applaud staff for the creativity and the innovation in this proposal. I think it's certainly worth considering and giving a lot of consideration to. How do we get more people to experience Mnday Park? I posted some photos of Mnday Lake a couple of days ago, and I got a whole bunch of reactions like I didn't realize that was in our neighborhood. And those of us who grew up in Coquitlam, I mean, we lived there, but there's a whole bunch of Coquitlam. There's a lot of Coquitlam that hasn't been experienced by a lot of our residents yet, and this is an opportunity. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Any other questions? We haven't had a mover yet. Second. So no further conversation on this. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Item 4 is report of General Manager, Parks, Recreation and Culture Services, invasive plant management strategy implementation. The recommendation is that Council direct staff to develop a draft bylaw for consideration that would require residents to remove giant hogweed from their property.
Do we have a mover?
Move recommendation.
I'll second it. Conversation? Constable Reamer.
Thank you. In the report, it indicates that staff have had conversations with some residents regarding their hogweed, and I think there were some numbers referenced in here, and that you know of very few who have actually removed it. Do we have any idea from those who have not removed it why they have not?
Through the chair, in each case that we have a report of giant hogweed, whether it's public or private property, we follow up on it, and when it's private property, we have a discussion with the homeowners about it and the concerns and why they may want to remove it. So in some cases, we have got feedback about what is holding them up in terms of doing it, and I guess the two sort of general responses would be, one, cost, because they don't want to do it themselves, they want to hire somebody, or the other being that they don't feel, I guess it's related to that they don't feel that they can do it themselves. So they don't have the capacity or they don't have the resources to do it. Those are some of the responses that we've had. And in other cases, we haven't really heard back in terms of why they're not actually following through with it.
Right. Now, if we were to develop a draft bylaw that would require residents to remove it, if residents didn't remove it, then I assume we would be levying a penalty of some sort. Is that correct? Is that the intent?
Yeah, the process would be similar to like the unsightly premises bylaw in that if they didn't follow through with the removal, we could follow up with the removal and then charge them for those services.
Okay, thank you. I'm hesitant to support this. I understand the problem with hogweed. I'm just concerned that if we bylaw our citizens in this regard, where is it going to stop? Are we going to start asking our citizens and telling them what they can plant and what they can't plant, what they have to remove, what they can't, what has to stay? I just have real concerns for private property rights where this is concerned. And if I could amend this bylaw to say, to draft a bylaw that would encourage residents to remove giant hogweed, I would, but then it wouldn't be a bylaw. So that's my concern with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch.
In the report, it references the district of Saanich. I was wondering if you can tell me if we know what type of success rate they're having with their bylaw.
That's interesting. Losing the microphone. All right. Actually, I don't have any information in terms of details and their success rate in Saanich. It's a relatively new bylaw there. That was the most local example that we have, but it's relatively recent. So in terms of specifics and numbers, we'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. I guess, when we're talking about something like this that apparently has a sap that causes severe burns and permanent scarring, and stuff, there's a real consideration that this can be dangerous to people. And I think that most people, if they knew this type of weed was grown on their property, would probably want to get rid of it anyway. So it's just a matter of highlighting it and bringing it to their attention, perhaps. But I think also that because it spreads, if you don't eradicate it on private land as well as public land, you're going to continue to have this problem. And I think this is one of those situations where at some point you have to weigh the balance of having private rights versus the rights of the municipality and the rest of the citizens, and whether or not they're going to be exposed to this. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that if somebody is going to be taking care of one yard and then the neighbor ignores it and continually it spreads to their yard again. I just don't see how we're going to be able to address this situation. And I think actually we have some concerns about kids that are going to be seriously injured by this. So I think we need to move forward with this.
Thank you. Councillor Asmundson.
Yes, I think I understand the need for this. And moving forward on this, because it's a very invasive plant, it will spread quickly, and it has, in a short period of time, Coquitlam started to take hold in certain areas. But when I look at this, it's through our bad seed program, our invasive plant strategy program. Would it not be, this is a difficult plant and a dangerous plant for people to remove. Could we, rather than find people, give an option that say, okay, that we would go in with our crews and remove the plant for them? Because some people don't have the ability, age, skill-wise, or whatever, to properly remove it. And our goal here in the city is to eradicate these invasive species, especially one that is at, I'd say, at the very higher level of invasive species. For one, has that been considered by staff?
Through the chair, I would say that although it's a relatively, as far as we know at this point, low-level infestation in the city, I don't think even at this level that we'd have the resources currently to be able to do that, to go onto private property and remove it from private property.
Okay, because my concern, once again, is that people don't know how to remove it or transport it. This is a plant that could also spread. So I just think we should, well, I want the bylaw to go forward. I want to have the threat of maybe a fine on it. I want to be able to help people get rid of this that don't have the ability or the cost to it. And when we go out there and we say, okay, you must remove it, the people don't, we go back to the bylaw and we say, okay, we're now telling you under this bylaw, if you don't, we're going to fine you, go to that stage. But are we also giving a pamphlet to these people recommending how to remove it, or companies are qualified to remove this? I don't know if all the companies may be qualified that you would call up that could properly remove this. So that would be my other issue. Are we leaving that information behind to help those private homeowners deal with this?
Thank you. Mayor Stewart.
Thank you. Many of the same comments I mean, obviously, there can be little doubt that we want to eradicate this plant. I'm compelled by, on page 4 of the statement, in Coquitlam, the infestation of this plant is still at a level where total eradication is possible. At the very least, the occurrences can be managed at a low level. That's only the case now because we're on top of it. Obviously, if we don't require private property owners to have the infestation removed where it exists on private property, then that won't be the case necessarily in a few years. It ought to be our, clearly Coquitlam's interest is to eradicate this plant. Coquitlam should be a giant hogweed-free zone. And to that end, I would support the idea that if we had 22 park sites, and we've identified that we're working on to eradicate plants from, and there's 11 private property sites confirmed to date. At the very least, we should be trying to work with property owners in making it very easy for them to eradicate the plant. But there should be no question that we have to make them, this has to be mandatory, whether it's city crew perhaps, maybe that's one thing we decide as city crew goes in there, and at a subsidized rate or not at all, or at no cost to the homeowner, we eradicate the plant from Coquitlam. But in any case, the plant, we have to take it seriously. Noxious weeds in invasive plants, in some cases are just pests. They're just annoyances, although their environmental impact in an area can be quite significant. They don't harm anybody. These plants have enormous health implications, and we've got to get rid of them. That can't be a question. This isn't a question of private property rights anymore, where a property owner is allowed to have dangerous animals on their property or dangerous plants. This is a case where the community's interest is to have the plant eradicated, and we should either certainly make it mandatory, but also figure out a way to work with property owners to make it easier. I suspect that in many cases the property owners are just left with no obvious solution, because there aren't a lot of brochures coming in the mail saying, if you need this plant eradicated, we can do it. And perhaps that suggests that we have to make it easier for them.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. Well, having spent a good chunk of yesterday morning pulling ivy out around my property that I carefully planted and nurtured some 25 years ago at the recommendation of my father-in-law, the professional horticulturist, I have a lot of sympathy for the invasive plant strategy. But I do recognize that they're of different levels. And this giant hogweed is obviously something that is a public danger. It can hurt people. And I think if there's a reason for us to interfere with someone's private property rights, it's because what's happening on that property may impact the community more broadly, and that's what we're hearing here. If you don't remove it from my house, then my neighbor's going to have it, and then the next block, and then it'll be up into Mnday Park, and on it rolls. It seems to me that you can make a very good case for this being a place where the city needs to spend the money on the individual property to protect the corporate whole, the community, the other private property, the other public lands. The financial implication note in this report talks about the total cost of the invasive plant strategy, but it doesn't stratify it. I'm not sure how much we spend on attempting to deal with the 22 public locations that we've found, but I wonder if we decided not to worry quite so much about the ivy, which is pretty harmless to people, and focused our efforts on giant hogweed, what the impact would be on costs, what our ability to get in and deal with the private properties might be. And I'd like to see a report that gives us some indication of the costs and benefits of taking on the private property side of the giant hogweed stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm really comfortable with the idea of taking our tax dollars and suddenly becoming maintainers of everybody's gardens. I think most of the people who have houses have either the ability or the financial means to take care of that. I liken this to our snow bylaw, where we have people who are legislated through our bylaws, and they have to keep their sidewalks clear. And then we brought out the Snow Angels program. Perhaps it's an opportunity for staff to have some type of volunteer horticulturalist that will go in and help people. If there's a hardship case, maybe there's a way that we can help them in some way. But I think the idea of taking this on as a city project that we're going to fund with tax dollars to go in and maintain people's properties or to take out dangerous weeds, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. So perhaps maybe we can explore that type of situation where maybe there are groups out there that community groups that would be involved in gardening, horticultural, that would be able to go in and safely remove hogweed from seniors who are unable to do it for themselves.
Thank you. Any further comment? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Councilor Reimers, opposed.
No, it's not unanimous.
So it's not unanimous. First time.
Item 5 is report of General Manager, Parks, Recreation and Culture Services related to Miller Elementary School addition of park washrooms, and the recommendation is that the committee receive the report for information.
Good to see.
Any comment? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Item 6 is report of General Manager, Parks, Recreation and Culture Services, Mackin Park Master Plan Process. I believe there's a presentation related to this, and the recommendation is that the committee receive the report for information.
No presentation, but a few great pictures.
Staff don't have a presentation for this, but depending on discussion, if there's questions, we do have supporting materials that we may reference.
Do we have a mover?
Move it.
Second. Any comment? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Item 7 is report of General Manager, Parks, Recreation and Culture Services related to the Olympic Torch Relay event's final report, and the recommendation is that the committee receive the report for information.
Receive.
Ms. McKay?
We have no presentation on this item, but staff are available to answer any questions.
Perfect. Seeing no comments, all those in favor of receipt? Unanimous. Anything around the table? Councillor Lynch?
Oh, sorry.
Wait for the mic. Thank you. I just had a question, I guess, probably through Ms. McKay. I was up in Mnday Park again, and I was noticing that signage up there on the baseball diamonds, which I think says Coquitlam Minor Baseball. They look really tired. I'm not sure, but I don't think that's the city's responsibility or the city signage that's up there, is it?
Mr. Chair, no, the city does not have the responsibility to maintain signage that are put up by sport organizations or other groups that may put it up. The issue in signage, though, in parks is a timely one, and it's raised a number of questions that I believe we'll be asking our new sports council to provide some advice to us on.
Perhaps prior to that, we could maybe even contact the association that has their name on the sign. I know that when I'm up there on the weekends and we have people from out of town, they're coming in, they're trying to find different baseball diamonds, and even the numbering of saying, it's number 3 or whatever is very difficult for them to find. I just don't think that's a good reflection on our city, and I don't think it'd be an owner's cost or implication for the organizations that initially put the sign up there to refresh them.
Mr. Chair, staff will be pleased to follow up on that.
Thank you.
Perfect. Anything else? We have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
And that's unanimous. Thank you very much for coming.